Most men live their entire lives reacting. Someone disrespects them, they react. Something doesn't go their way, they react. The world shifts, and they shift with it, not by choice, but because no one ever taught them how to stand still. The Stoics had a name for this kind of man. They called him a slave, not in chains, in his own mind. Epictetus was born into actual slavery, no freedom, no possessions, no power over anything outside himself. And yet he became one of the most formidable minds who ever lived, not because of what he owned, but because of what could not touch him. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, one of the most powerful men in human history, studied these same ideas, and in his private journal, written for no audience, he recorded what it took to remain unmoved, not for the crowd, for himself. Today on the Stoic Discipline, we go into 10 principles that built men like that. These are not motivational words. They are mental tools, forged in a philosophy that has survived 2,000 years because it works. By the end of this, nothing, and I mean nothing, will land on you the way it once did. If this is your first time here, subscribe. We do not do hype on this channel. We do precision. Stay with me. The first principle: anchor your purpose. Most men have wishes. Very few have purpose. And that difference will determine everything about how life hits you. A man with a wish collapses when things get hard. A man with a purpose uses the hard thing as fuel. Epictetus said that difficulties reveal what men are made of. Not comfort, not success, difficulty. Because the man with no clear purpose in his bones gets swept away the moment the storm arrives. He has nothing to hold on to. Think of a ship with no compass. It does not matter how strong the hull is. Without direction it wanders, and a wandering man is a vulnerable man. Your purpose is your compass. But here is where most people get this wrong. They think purpose means a career goal or a life achievement. The purpose is deeper than that. It is the answer to the question, what kind of man do I intend to become? What do I stand for when nothing is working in my favor? Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself, not to the world, about this. He did not need anyone to witness his commitment. He anchored it internally, quietly, immovably. That is the distinction. Purpose is not what you announce. It is what you return to when everything else gives way. So find it. Not in a phone note, in your chest. Know what you stand for and why you stand for it. When that is done, the chaos around you becomes noise, and noise cannot move an anchored man. The second principle: guard the gate of your mind. Every single day, something is trying to enter your mind uninvited. A careless comment from someone who doesn't matter. A news headline designed to spike your fear. A memory pulling you back into a past you've already survived. Most men leave the gate wide open. Epictetus taught that the mind is the one domain that is truly yours. Not your body, not your reputation, not your income, your mind. And if you do not guard it, the world will fill it with whatever serves the world, not you. This is not about suppressing emotion. The Stoics were not emotionless. They were selective. They chose what they allowed to take up space inside them, and they were disciplined about it. Think of the man who is easily baited. One insult and his entire day is derailed. That is not just a weakness of character. That is a failure of protection. He left the gate open and paid the price. Guarding your mind means becoming deliberate about what you consume, what you read, who you listen to, which conversations you engage with, and which ones you walk away from. Not every provocation deserves your energy. Not every argument deserves your voice. Every morning before the world reaches you, set your perimeter. Decide what enters and what does not because you are afraid of what is outside, but because you have something valuable inside that is worth protecting. A mind that is guarded cannot be easily stolen, and the man whose mind cannot be stolen is in every meaningful sense free. The third principle: disarm criticism. Here is the truth about criticism. Most of it says far more about the person delivering it than it says about you. Epictetus was precise on this. We cannot control what others say or think about us. We can only control how much power we hand to their words. That is where most men fail. They hear criticism and immediately begin measuring themselves against it, as if the critic has authority over their worth. The Stoic approach is not defensive, it is discernment. When criticism arrives, the disciplined man pauses. He asks one question: is there truth in this? If yes, he takes what is useful and discards the emotional weight attached to it. If not, he lets it pass like wind past a wall. Marcus Aurelius had an entire empire trying to shape his self-image: senators, rivals, philosophers, citizens. And yet his journals reveal a man remarkably unmoved by external judgment. Not because he ignored feedback, but because his standard of measurement came from within, not from the crowd. He wrote, "The approval of such men, who do not even stand approved in their own eyes. What is it worth?" To disarm criticism, you must have a self-evaluation you trust more than any outside voice. Know your own work. Know your own values. Know what you are building and why. When that foundation is solid, criticism becomes data at best and noise at worst. Neither one can wound you. The fourth principle: transform offense into armor. Someone wrongs you. Someone insults what you have built. Someone tries to diminish you in front of others. The question Epictetus would ask is not, "What did they do to you?" The question is, "What will you do with it?" Because offense only becomes damage when you decide it does. That is the mechanism. The slight happens, there is a gap, a fraction of a second, sometimes longer, and in that gap you choose your response. Most men never find that gap. They react before they realize they have a choice. The Stoic discipline is learning to live inside that gap, to slow the moment down, to observe what is happening inside you. The heat in your chest, the urge to retaliate, the noise, and then ask yourself, what does a man of my character do here? This is not passivity. Do not confuse stillness with weakness. The man who does not react impulsively is not powerless. He is the most powerful man in the room because he controls where that power goes. When you transform offense, something shifts. The thing that was designed to diminish you becomes evidence of your discipline. Every slight you absorb and redirect builds you. Like iron that is struck and strengthened, not cracked. The person who tried to provoke you wanted fire. Give them silence. The silence of a man who has already decided he cannot be moved. That is a far more formidable response than anything anger could produce. The fifth principle: stare fear in the face. Fear is not your enemy, avoidance is. Because the fear you refuse to face does not stay still while you look away. It grows, it expands. It begins to organize your life around itself without your permission. Epictetus taught that what terrifies us is not the event itself. It is our mental image of the event. We build the disaster in our minds long before it arrives, and sometimes it never arrives at all. But we suffer from it every day in advance. The Stoic response to fear is direct examination, not recklessness, not avoidance, examination. What exactly am I afraid of? What is the worst realistic outcome? Could I survive it? And if the answer is yes, then what exactly is this fear protecting me from? Most of the time you will find the fear is guarding comfort, not survival, and comfort is not worth being enslaved to. Marcus Aurelius faced the prospect of death with what can only be called calm ferocity. He did not deny it. He did not distract himself from it. He examined it until it lost the ability to disturb him. He wrote, "It is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live." Take your fear and hold it up to the light. Name it precisely. Break it into its actual parts. You will find it is smaller than the shadow it casts. And each time you face one fear fully, the others become less heavy. The man who has done this work does not walk without fear. He walks forward through it, which is an entirely different thing. The sixth principle: premeditate the storm. The Stoics had a practice called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of adversity. Before any significant undertaking, they would deliberately imagine what could go wrong. Not to invite pessimism, but to strip the future of its power to surprise them. Epictetus believed that the man who has anticipated difficulty is the man who meets it with composure. Because he is not reacting to something unexpected, he is executing a response he already prepared. This is not the same as worry. Worry is uncontrolled, it spirals, it feeds itself with no purpose. Premeditatio malorum is structured, deliberate. You set the terms, you ask, if this goes badly, what will I do? If this fails, what is my next move? If the worst happens, who will I choose to be in that moment? Then you answer those questions before the storm arrives. The man who skips this step is the man who collapses under pressure, not because he was weak, but because he was unprepared. The first time he met the difficulty was when it was already upon him. Marcus Aurelius returned to this practice again and again in his private writings. He imagined loss, ingratitude, betrayal, not to dwell in darkness, but to visit the dark scenario in advance and return from it, so that when it arrived in life, his mind had already made peace with it. Tonight, take one area of your life where you feel most exposed. Walk into the worst possible outcome in your mind and decide right now who you will be if it happens. That decision made in advance is a form of power most men never reach. The seventh principle, build your inner fortress. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." That is the center of everything, the outer world, your reputation, your possessions, your status. None of it can be fully secured. It can be taken. It can turn against you overnight, but your inner world is different. Your thoughts, your values, your responses, those belong to you. And if you build them with the same effort men pour into building their external lives, you construct something that cannot be seized. This is the inner fortress, not a metaphor, a reality, a place inside you so stable, so trained, so deliberate, that whatever strikes the outside does not penetrate. Building this fortress requires daily effort, not grand gestures, small, consistent acts of self-discipline. Waking when you said you would wake. Holding your tongue when the impulse to speak is strong. Following through on commitments you made to yourself when no one is watching. These small acts are the bricks. Marcus Aurelius was the most powerful man in the Roman world, and his journals are filled with reminders to himself. Not proclamations for history, private reminders. Because he understood that inner strength is not something you achieve once. It is something you tend every day without exception. The man who builds his inner fortress does not withdraw from the world. He is fully present in it, but he moves through it from a place of stillness rather than being moved by it. That distinction is everything. The eighth principle, master the pause. There is a moment that separates the disciplined man from the reactive one. It is not the moment of action. It is the moment just before it. The pause. Epictetus taught that we are never compelled to respond. We always have a choice. The problem is, most men do not believe they have one. They feel the trigger, the insult, the bad news, the confrontation, and what follows feels automatic. But it is not. That sense of automaticity is just an untrained mind moving at its default speed. The trained mind pauses. It creates a brief distance between what happened and what it does next. And in that distance, reason arrives. What is actually true here? What does this moment actually require from me? What response will I be able to respect tomorrow? With practice, the pause becomes instantaneous. A breath, a blink, a shift in posture, but the gap is there. And the gap is where your character lives. The urge to respond immediately, to act, to speak, to decide right now, is often the impulse of a man who fears that silence signals weakness. The Stoic knows the opposite is true. Speaking too quickly, acting in heat, deciding before the dust settles, these are the moves of a man controlled by his circumstances. Mastering the pause is how you become the one doing the controlling, not of others, of yourself, which is the only form of control that actually matters. The ninth principle, accept what cannot be changed. This is where most men stumble, because it sounds like surrender. It is not surrender. It is precision. Epictetus drew a hard line on one side. What is within your power, your thoughts, your choices, your responses? On the other side, everything else. Other people's actions, time, outcomes, loss. He was not gentle about this distinction. He said the man who blurs this line will suffer, and he will suffer for nothing. Because energy spent raging against what cannot be changed is energy stolen from what can. Every hour spent resisting reality is an hour not spent engaging with it. A man loses something he spent a year building. He has two options. He can spend the next month in bitterness, replaying conversations, assigning blame, rehearsing what he could have done differently. Or he can accept the loss as a fixed point. Nothing he does now changes what already happened and redirect himself forward. One of those men will be stronger in 6 months. The other will be exactly where he is today. Marcus Aurelius lost soldiers, lost allies, faced illness, faced betrayal from men he trusted. He did not perform equanimously for the crowd. He practiced it privately because he understood that resisting what had already happened was the most refined form of self-punishment. Accept, then move. Accept what cannot be changed, not as a defeat, as precision, as the act of a man who refuses to waste himself on battles that are already over. The 10th principle, live by your nature. The Stoics believed every man has a nature, not the nature the world assigned him, not the role inherited from family, not the identity built to earn approval. His true nature, the one underneath all of that. Epictetus held that living in alignment with this was a man's highest obligation, because the man who lives against his own nature is at war with himself. And a man at war with himself is vulnerable to everything outside him. Living according to your nature starts with honest discovery. Not what you were told you were, not what you settled into, but what remains when you strip away the performance. What do you value at your core? What kind of conduct can you look at and call genuinely yours? Where does your sense of rightness actually come from? The Stoic virtues, wisdom, courage, justice, temperance, are not abstract ideals. They are daily operating principles. Each decision is measured against them. Each action held up to the question, does this align with the man I intend to be? Living according to your nature also means releasing the need for everyone to understand you. Not everyone will see what you are building. Not everyone is meant to. What matters is that you see it clearly and that you do not waver from it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, confine yourself to the present, not to shrink your vision, but to remind himself that the life lived well is lived in this moment, with this character, according to this nature, not the life performed for others, the life chosen for yourself. Because at the end of it all, the only verdict that stays with you is your own. And the only opinion of yourself that truly cannot be taken is the one you earn through how you actually lived. 10 principles, and every one of them points to the same thing. The man who cannot be affected is not the man with no feelings. He is the man who has trained where his feelings lead, who decides, deliberately, daily, that the world outside will not dictate the world within. That is the Stoic discipline, not a one-time insight, a practice, built one principle at a time, strengthened through repetition, made real only through living. You have the tools. What you do with them, that is your work. If this reaches you, share it with one man who needs it. And if you have not subscribed yet, do it now. We build here every week, no noise,